What's your coworker meltdown story? Story 1. Pizza Hut manager asked one of the drivers to put on his uniform shirt. Driver flipped out and tried to set his shirt on fire in the lobby while screaming about oppression. Then he took off for some reason and drove to the airport, where he jumped the fence leading to the tarmac, got roughly arrested by the airport cops. We never saw him again. Turned out he had drank a bunch of Robitussin. Story 2. A guy just went batshit at one point when a manager spoke to him for taking time off of the phone after hard call. This is in a telemarketing company. The dude lost his, screamed out the manager, and left. Then he went on a popular forum and spilled all the company bullshit. We had press to trying to ask us questions. Edit it. Hey Race, the news story, was doing carpentry work in the ghetto with another carpenter, old Jim. Some local kids were there cracking wise, being smart-mouthed, and just generally hanging around, annoying the out of both of us. Old Jim yelled at them a few times. They kept it up. Old Jim got madder. They thought that was even more fun and started walking right up to old Jim and smart-mouthing him right to his face. Old Jim listened to maybe 2 of them before had heard enough. He grabbed the last kid, lifted him up against a wall we were building, grabbed his nail gun and nailed through the shoulders of the kid's jacket. So the kid was literally hung on the wall, dangling from his jacket. Old Jim got 1 inch from his face and just screamed at the kid for a few minutes, just absolutely red-faced screaming at him. The kid's eyes were huge. He suddenly wasn't the little smarty pants he had been a minute earlier. He was scared to death, hanging from a wall with a screaming madman right in his face. Old Jim had a meltdown. He kept it up for a full 2 minutes, just screaming an inch away from the kid's face. The kid was near tears. Finally, old Jim had said his piece. He got a pry bar, pull out the nails, and the kid came down off the wall. That kid's feet hit the ground, and he was gone, running for everything he was worth. It seemed like he just sort of instantly vaporized the instant he hit the ground. An hour later, the cops show up. Boys, sorry, but you can't nail kids to a wall. Old Jim had to pay for the kid's jacket. Story 3. When I was in high school, I was a busser at a kind of fancy stay place. Think Roost Chris, but just a tad more casual. Anyway, this one kid who bussed with me was moving out of state and decided to not give a 2 weeks notice. The last day he was able to come in before he moved, he walked up to like 2 or 3 tables and just ripped the nastiest sounding farts I had ever heard. I accidentally walked in the back when a manager was firing him. Manager says, "Why would you do that instead of just telling me you quit?" My buddy responds, "I hate this place." He then farted again and walked out. It's not so much a meltdown, but it's still pretty amusing. Edit fixed a word. Story 4. I was working in a fast food kitchen, and we hired this shifty-looking guy in his 50s named Chicago. His first day, he started complaining because we kept him on only one task because he was new and still slow. Before we know it, he was yelling, "Y'all just don't want to shine. Y'all just scared." Then he just walked out muttering that this place was too dirty to work and we had just opened, so the place was in no way dirty. Story 5. Waiting tables. He goes in the bathroom and doesn't come out for an hour. I took all of the tables for the section while he was gone. When he comes out very clearly on some type of drugs, he is angry I stole tips from him by not waiting for him to get back before I seated people. He cusses as he walks out. Came back a week later, demanding the tips from the tables that he should have waited on. Story 6. I don't know if this counts as a meltdown, but in my previous company, our IT guy used to get naked in the server room. No idea why, he just did. One day, one of the ladies in HR with computer problems walks in there without knocking and finds him naked with a jar of peanut butter, not sure what he was doing with that. IT guy gets dressed and goes to HR and quits and storms out about an hour later. And for some reason, when he left, the guy left the jar of peanut butter in the server room. Story 7. I used to work at a bookstore with 2 guys named Sean and Warren. Sean was a real abrasive, loved insulting people and getting under their skin. And as such, a lot of people hated Sean, but nobody hated him more than Warren. Warren had some anger management issues, and with the way Sean kept pushing his buttons, it was only a matter of time before Warren snapped. We all knew there was going to be a showdown between them at some point. We did not expect it to happen behind the cash wrap 2 days before Christmas in front of about 100 customers. I was on the other side of the store when it happened, and by the time I rushed over, the fight had already been broken up. I don't know what Sean said to Warren, but Warren had finally snapped and punched Sean, and it turned into an all-out brawl between the two. Since Warren had thrown the first punch, we told him to go home, and Sean stayed at the cash wrap. I started helping a customer find a book in our computer system when there was another commotion next to me. Warren had taken the combination lock off his locker from and back, and was now bashing Sean over the head with it. I had to grab Warren, pull him off, and calm him down, and he finally left. I then just went straight back to helping the customer find the book she wanted, and Sean went back to calm himself down. Sean wound up quitting because he was afraid he'd get fired. I don't know if he would have, and Warren was fired. Last ID heard of Warren, he was on trial for attempted murder after he stabbed an ex-girlfriend's, then current boyfriend, in the throat with a pen. Story 8. A manager that wasn't really my manager when his bosses were gone He would take 1 to 2 hour lunches. On the clock, we were allowed a 30-minute lunch off the clock. He would sit in the management office and eat a little, read the paper, just basically not working while the store got busy. It was fairly well known by the lower workers he did this. We just didn't say anything. One day, a manager of equal power from a different department confronted him about it while he had been on lunch for over an hour. He picked up his sandwich and threw it at her, yelling about why doesn't he get to take his lunch in peace like everyone else. Basically just went on this rant of irrelevant stuff, then just stopped and went back to reading the paper. He was fired by the end of the day. Edit wow. Highest rated comment to date. Nice. Story 9. Woman kept taking off and coming in late. She was about 50. Eventually the boss called her in and asked what is going on. The woman just loses it, saying it's none of their business. Boss tells her that they will have to let her go if she misses one more day, or is late again this year as she missed 15 days unscheduled, used her sick time and vacation days, and was late every day by up to an hour, and it was only April, and they will be docking her for those hours she wasn't here or left early. Woman starts screaming, "You don't have that right, you can't take my money. Fuck you, just you." Eventually she pulled the mat on top of the desk of sending papers and the computer to the floor. Boss booked it and locked her in a room where she continued to kick holes in the drywall and break everything in sight. Security comes, they call the police come go in, and she started throwing stuff at them, screaming, "That's my money." We were escorted off the floor, and I'm guessing they tossed her or something, because she was taken out handcuffed to a wheelchair, having worked in telco tech support for a few years at the front line and second levels. Many moons ago, I saw a few of these. I wish to preface that none of these people were fired for this, although many of them quit on their own accord shortly afterwards. One coworker was getting exceptionally frustrated at a customer who didn't quite understand the concept of click the OK button. After several attempts at this, he yelled in a fit of anger, "Click the OK button." As I didn't reach the mute button in time, the customer I was on the phone with started laughing and mentioned how it sounded like someone was having a bad day. The mute button was often your friend in coworker meltdown stories and phone tech support, too. Shortly after I became a second-level agent, a coworker of mine who was particularly high-strung would go from 0 to 100 pretty quickly. Without any warning, he ended up ripping his headset off his head and yelling "F-U-C-C-K" as loudly as his lungs and larynx would allow him. The manager who was on duty at the time was a lovely woman, emerged from her office just to see this employee smash his headset to pieces. He got the rest of the day off. 3. We had a gentleman working who was doing the graveyard shift. Back at the time this story happened, it was done solo. He had a particularly bad phone call where a customer wasn't able to rent an adult film and was getting upset about it, using language he probably wouldn't have used in a face-to-face encounter. The employee in question hung up the phone, left to the office, having made the quick decision to end his employment, threw his ID in dumpster, and went home to sleep. He later remarked that it was the best sleep he ever had. Tim screamed at boss, not even sure why. Argument ended with her throwing her work badge at him and leaving, saying she let him know tomorrow if she still wanted to work there. Did I mention she was a temp? Security had her banned from the building and desk cleared out within the hour. Story 10. Tina. Tina worked at my first retail job with me. I was 17. She was a catty, spoiled 50-something woman with a rich husband. Why she bothered to work a shitty retail job? The only reason I can think of is that she was so vindictive and that she needed people to take it out on. Tina once stole 25 boxes of store logo reusable shopping bags because we never put them out, so I figured we weren't going to sell them. Tina did not like our store manager. Anytime her and the store manager walked into the break room while she was there, she would make a point of farting loudly. Tina frequently bitched that she needed a chair when she was on register. She couldn't stand for very long because Shed had a child. Her only child was her 20-year-old son. Tina was once assigned stocking the seasonal decoration aisle. She didn't want to do it and retaliated by spending an 8-hour shift folding and refolding our tiny section of towels. Tina broke one of the toilets by using the plunger to pry the seat off, rather than simply unclick the 2 tabs holding it on to clean it. It got better when the seat finally gave out, through what I can only imagine is a sign that even God didn't want her working there. The seat apparently flew upwards with sufficient force as to knock the tank cover off, causing it to crack in pieces on the floor. The meltdown about once every 6 months would have a night where we came in after the store closed to rearrange, build shelves, or other tasks that would be difficult to do when the store was open. It normally took only an hour or 2, which were paid time half for. Tina, naturally, hated these. Shed the entire time, make mean remarks about the manager when she was out of earshot, and just make the night longer for everyone else. This time, right as she said, "Christine, manager is such a little brat." Guess who was right behind her? Oh, Christine lost her, one of 2 times I ever saw her do so. She let out 8 months of pin-up aggression out in about 30 seconds. finishing up with, "You're done here for good. Get thee out of my store." Tina responded, all in all, Tina's rampage cost the store around $8,000 in damages. She knocked over several huge shelves, knocked our cash registers off the counter, destroying everything except the drawers, and threw a planter through the manager's office window before storming out. Now, the story doesn't end there. See, our registers were very intricately hooked up so that corporate could see every login, transaction, etc. All of the wires were ripped out during Tina's rampage, and not 10 seconds after she bailed, our phone was ringing, and some suit down at HQ in Dallas was asking why our entire store just went offline. Our manager explained the situation in great detail. Corporate asked every employee who was there to fill out an incident report. We turned all of these in, and about a week later, our regional manager comes in with some guy in a suit. The company was paying to hire a lawyer to sue Tina for damages. The company won. I don't know if they ever got their money or not, but for months, we joked that our manager should file assault and emotional distress charges against Tina for the farting. Story 11. Well, I had a meltdown at work once. I worked at a very small dog boarding and grooming shop in college. My boss hand-wrote our schedule and posted it on the wall each week, so I'd take a picture of it with my phone, so I'd have it with me. One time she decided, after she had posted the schedule and I had taken my picture, that SH wanted me to come in half an hour later that Thursday to do grooming rather than my usual boarding work. She changed it on the schedule, but never mentioned it to me. So I came in at the time on the schedule that was in my phone. The receptionist says to me when I come in that I'm scheduled for grooming, not boarding. So I say okay and wait for the first grooming dogs to show up so I can start brushing them and trimming their nails. Well, when the boss arrives 15 minutes later and sees me already there brushing a dog before my shift starts, she flips out, tells me to put the dog in a kennel, and then walks me around to all the boarding rooms saying things like, "Well, why didn't you clean this?" And this, she accused me of trying to steal money from her by coming in early and forced me to change my clock in time to the time on the schedule. Mind you, an extra half hour is only 4. I point out that she never told me she changed the schedule, so I came in according to the schedule on my phone, but she just yells at me some more. Now, this happened at the end of the semester when projects were due and finals were coming up, so I was already stressed out. Plus, this wasn't the first time Shed treated me like, so I had what I can only describe as an anxiety attack, mental breakdown type thing. I burst into tears, my legs were shaking so bad I could hardly stand, and I kept yelling right back at her, trying to defend myself. She looked rather shocked and backed off a bit. I wanted to quit so bad, but I needed the money for rent and food, so as soon as I calmed down, I went back to working my shift. I did quit later, though, after I'd found another job and the majority of the rest of the staff had quit due to being sick of the bosses. She verbally abused everyone there. Story 12. I work at a vet hospital, and we had to take x-rays of a dog's tummy because it was having diarrhea and throwing up, so it had to be on its back. It was a decent-sized Dogo breed, a pit bull, so it was definitely a 2-person job. I grabbed the front legs, and my coworker grabbed the back legs, and we tried to keep the animal straight and on its back. The dog then violently projectile on my coworker, covering her in a 6-inch wide line from her chest to her hairline. She absolutely freaked, screaming and swearing, and dry heaving and carrying on. Managed to keep the dog still for the x-ray, though. We were all crying because we were laughing so hard. She would have done the same if we had been in her place. It was like laughing at a family member and not out of malice. Even she laughed about it later. Days later, Story 13. Worked at a college bookstore. We had been wearing polo shirts for our uniform, but one day we got new button-ups before we opened. The ladies weren't made to be tucked, but the guys' shirts were. I was the only guy working there at the time. I tucked mine in, but I didn't realize the front of my shirt had gotten caught in my zipper. A new girl on the staff, based on nothing but seeing the front of my shirt in my zipper, decided I was harassing her. I guess she thought I was trying to flash her or something, but I never said anything or made any physical gesture that could be construed as advance. She wrote a note detailing this affront to her dignity and took it to my boss, another woman. In her office, my boss knows me, and she knows it would be unwise for me to start harassing a coworker when all of my coworkers are women. She comes out and tells me my shirt is caught in my zipper. Mortified, I go to the bathroom to fix it, and I think, outside of me being a bit embarrassed, that's the end of it at this point. I didn't know about the accusation of harassment. The girl was very upset that her accusation wasn't taken more seriously. She went to the bathroom for about 2 hours. Luckily, it was a slow day, and comes back and starts cussing out my boss, who proceeds to take her back in her office and talk. Not understanding what the frustration was about at the time, I'm very confused. New girl gets fired. As she leaves, she grabs about 4 packages of really shitty pens and sprints out the door. My boss explained the situation to me after she left. Story 14. Worked with a guy who was severely bipolar. But back in a time when no one really knew what bipolar was, we were in IT and in a situation where a lot of processes that are automated today had to be done manually. One day, he sent out a rant-wide email about how he was the only one maintaining the email spam filter, that it was supposed to be a department job, and he was really mad that it had been left to him. I pointed out to him that I was helping had done so that morning, and that if he felt like he was going alone, that I'd start helping more. He just threw a meltdown fit, screaming at me that I was lying, threatening me, and just about threw something at me. Story 15, I was working in an online store that specialized in DD Warhammer related items. We were super backed up and working late on Christmas Eve, packing items to ship. The goal was to finish that night, so we could all spend Christmas with our families. A few people were already on vacation, so it was myself, my good friend Jay, and this kid who I will call Sam. Sam was pretty socially challenged, even for a group of Warhammer players, and was very much so in LARP. Well, I should say in OSCA, think of Ren fairs, but more serious. I was pretty upset at Sam because he arbitrarily decided to leave early and leave us working past midnight. We were having a discussion about LARP, which was one of my hobbies Werewolf the Apocalypse represent, and I asked him about his LARP group. He got pretty heated and began to loudly inform me about how SCA was not LARPing. Maybe it was because I was frustrated at him making us work late, but I decided that this was a perfect time to troll. I wasn't the bully type, and I admit that I do feel bad about badgering him. Will you play fight with swords, right, as a character with costumes? Why isn't that a LARP? And so on. Sam knocked over a folding chair and scurried out of the store. I got a pretty good laugh until this chubby 55 neckbeard kid Kix opened the door to the shop, wearing a homemade armor bucket helmet, brandishing a wooden stick, not a LARP. Would you like to get hit in the face by this? He yelled, walking furiously towards me with the stick raised above his head. With a stick, I said, trying to keep my composure, it's a freaking long sword, he said, waving his stick around and knocking over some Warhammer boxes. The stick was then pointed right in my face. I raised my hands above my head, making claws, the werewolf LARP symbol for shifting into a werewolf. Watch out, I'm turning, I yelled, and then emitted a howl while laughing hysterically. The little smacked me with the stick, and Jay pulled me back right before I made a bad life decision. Take your stick and go home. I yelled, ITS, a sword, he yelled, before walking out forever. Story 16, where I used to work, a boss had an issue with one of the guys in the warehouse. It all seemed fine, but then in the course of less than a day, they found out he was stealing merchandise out of the warehouse. To ensure he wouldn't get caught, he would take it to another coworker's house. He was having an affair with that coworker they'd had in the warehouse on multiple occasions. Literally nobody had any idea any of this was happening. Then suddenly this whole story came out at once. Funnily enough, he got fired, but his accomplice kept her job. She somehow kept working there for another 6 months, or so, even with everyone judging the out of her. Story 17, I used to work in a very clique-wide lab. 8 women in the same room for 40 hours a week with a boss who encouraged gossip. The ages ranged from late 50s to 2 months out of college 21. The 21-year-old had worked there while a student and promoted up to full-time, but never shed the student worker mentality. One of the middle-aged women got fed up with the immaturity and decided to lay down the law that we are co-workers, not friends. Stop interrogating me about my personal life. Young chick could not handle the idea that older co-worker did not want to be friends, just respectful colleagues, and had a sobbing meltdown. This whole drama fest was mediated by the boss, and it made for a super awkward time to come back from lunch. Story 18, when I first started working retail. It was for this family-owned grocery store. It was fairly decent-sized and had a ton of loyal customers. I had been working there for 5 months. I was 16 years old, and it was my first job. We had an older lady named Michelle who worked there since it opened like 20 years ago. I had no keys to the register, and there were certain things I could and couldn't do, like refunds. Anyways, Michelle never ran the register. She kept the store stocked because I was better at being the face of the store when people entered and was better at being on the register. I just didn't have keys, so I had to call her up to help. Michelle didn't like that, even though it was one of the reasons she kept her job after customers kept complaining that she was bitchy to them. Well, I come in for my shift, and right off the bat, I get hit with like 3 returns, someone needing to break 100 bill. I wasn't allowed to do that. And finally, I ran out of 1s, 5s, and 10s. So I needed Michelle to come up and help me. Michelle stormed around the counter, threw open the safe where we kept more money 1s, 5s, 10s, etc., and just threw the tray of money on the counter, where it slid across the counter and landed on the ground, scattering money everywhere for customers to pick up. Luckily, the customers were decent people and handed me all the money in the broken till. I got myself set up, and despite being young, I decided to chastise Michelle because that childish behavior, all I got out was come on, Michelle, before she pulled the lanyard with the keys around her neck off and chucking them at me with a resounding fuck you. And that was how I got promoted to key holder. I was working as a lab assistant under a woman who was pregnant and in the stage where her sense of smell was like a superpower. One of the tests I had to do involved using pure acetic acid, very strong vinegar. She really couldn't handle the smell so much that she made me and thousands of dollars of lab equipment go outside to run this test while sitting on a concrete step 15 meters or so from the lab. Story 19 finally caught this early enough in my office. About once a month or so, multiple people would come in wearing the same colored outfits. No coordination, no plan, just everyone showing up matching. One guy will make a huge deal out of it. Oh, hey, it must be blue shirt say. Well, you didn't get the memo, her. Then one day a bunch of people had on teal, and he starts again. The person he picked on for not wearing the right color looked at him and commented that it was a beautiful color on him, but the buttons were backwards, and walked away. Locked himself in his office for the day. Complained at HR that someone had called him gay. Then quit a week later saying he couldn't work with people who thought he was a cross-dresser. There was also a woman who threw a tantrum because often the toilet seats were left up in an office that was 90 male. She quit because all the other women started putting the seat up when we were done. It wasn't exactly a meltdown, at least not at first. Working in IT for a debt collection agency, and a coworker in our department is tasked with updating a server after hours. He's supposed to stay late Friday and do this. This is our primary database. It runs the whole business. It cannot be down during business hours. I walk into the tense conversation my boss and coworker are having about this, and it's obvious that his hamster is spinning at full speed to get out of it. Eventually, a company-wide email goes out to the effect: server will be going down for maintenance Friday at 5 p.m. Everything seems fine. Coworker is fuming about not being respected and is acting in general like it for a couple of days. He's kind of most days, we really don't pay any mind. Friday rolls around and his office door stays shut all morning. Our boss heads out for lunch at noon, and at 12:15 p.m., we are all simultaneously logged out of the server. My other coworker and I rush to the server room, where we find our third coworker, who was tasked with upgrading the server. We both stand there, mouths wide open, and can't even begin to find words. I turn, walk out, and our boss says, "Hi, I know you're on lunch, but coworker just started the server upgrade, and the entire company is down. I thought you would like to know before owner or president calls." What? I repeat myself as the president walks in behind me, which I'm not aware of. He hears everything, starts to open his mouth to me, realizes I am the messenger, not the problem, turns, walks into the server room, and explodes on our coworker. In the middle of this, our boss comes in, hears the screaming, and realizes he is too late to even attempt damage control. The argument is quickly going nuclear. He's mad. The president is mad. Coworker looks like a kid on Christmas morning. This is where in the experience we thought he had gone mad. We were all expecting that to be the moment he had a total meltdown. It's a train wreck. We think we were watching our coworker self-destruct, the non-coworker, and I can't look away. And that's when our coworker said, "Well, I thought we were just over-glorified, overpaid clerical workers who had no impact on collections. So I didn't see why my clerical work needed to wait until after hours on Friday, since it didn't have any effect on the business. IT is just overpaid and over-glorified clerical staff," was a comment the owner had made more than once and had gone unchecked on. It was the justification for our pay freezes, our low salaries, lack of overtime, lack of comp time, basically everything going that would have balanced the scale for the extra time we had all the entire IT department spent in various crisis situations. After hours on the weekends, over holidays, coming in when we were supposed to be off, in the middle of the night, and the times we had worked 24 hours in a row just to keep things running, we couldn't help it. We grinned. We all four grinned like crazy idiots. We knew, we understood, we could fault him for it professionally. But personally, we couldn't help ourselves from feeling just a couple inches taller. And that's when I thought the president was going absolutely lose it. Our boss waved us away, told our coworker to just get it finished quickly, and steered the president into his office. The server came back up. The coworker spent hours getting reamed, but managed to keep his job. And we were never called clerical staff again, and we started getting a little bit of comp time and extra pay for those situations where we worked above and beyond. It wasn't much. It certainly wasn't overtime pay, and it still took 2 weeks' notice to use comp time, and it had to be used within a month, but it felt better. Story 20. So, I was that person. In the span of 2 years, I was forced to switch jobs to a more demanding job with no pay increase. Then other people began quitting, and I was saddled with their tasks. Once again, without a pay increase, I suffer with depression and anxiety. I began to become increasingly depressed and paranoid that I wasn't living up to expectations and that my co-workers that I loved and thought of as family were plotting behind my back. They weren't. My husband gets a new job 6 hours away, and we're going to move. I'm heading up a new software change, and I agreed to stay an extra month to help with the transition. The Sunday before he is supposed to move, I snap, I attempted suicide, I called my boss from the ER, and broke the news to her over the phone and told her I wouldn't be coming back after all. After 5 days in the mental ward, we move. My husband takes my keys back into my office for me. I was too ashamed to go inside. After a year away, I finally went in my old office and saw my old coworkers, at least the ones that hadn't quit due to poor upper management. We cried and hugged, and I felt better about it all, but am still ashamed of what I did. Story 21 worked at a wholesale office supply company that had a warehouse op. A guy was hired to pick orders and showed up to start work. Some weirdness ensued, and about the 3D day, someone else comes to report that new guy is hurting himself. He had dropped a box of razor blades, which burst open, and was picking them with his bare hands. Cutting his fingers up, manager lets him go, says it isn't working out. New guy shows up next day for work with his lunch packed and ready to go. Manager sends him home. New guy's mom comes in to plead his case, still fired. Many months forward, we hear on the news that new guy is arrested for standing in the door of his rather upscale home on Main St. and calling out to the Catholic schoolgirls. While he is in the psych ward, our company gets a visit from the Secret Service asking about new guy. Turns out he had been threatening press. Ronald Reagan. I still feel sad when I think about how optimistic he must have felt when he showed up with his lunch ready to have another chance. Story 22 worked as a ride operator at a theme park. Some guy loaded up a coaster, started it, and decided fuck it. I quit and simply walked off, leaving the ride running. A quick-thinking operator who wasn't trained on the ride ran into the booth and hit the E-stop, which stopped the ride at height. Not the most perfect situation, but better than leaving it running whilst the operator was on his way home. No, really a meltdown, I know, but that was hot news for about a week, till a different operator pissed out a window onto a flower bed. Story 23, my coworker, let's call him Gacy because that's the vibe, walks out to the coffee pot and has to wash it himself before he can start brewing a fresh pot. He starts screaming, "IS nobody gonna help me clean the coffee pot." Then he proceeds to sulk off and do his coffee business and sits back down at his desk as if nothing happened. That guy has been and continues to be working there since 1995. He's also threatened to punch his supervisor in the face. Good dude. Coworker fails to get job finished with allotted material in time. Coworker asks for assistance as material is running out. I start troubleshooting as it runs out, throw up my hands and say it's too late. Coworker cries, goes red-faced, throws tantrum, reports me to supervisor for being insulting. Ask for help sooner next time or don't bother wasting my time. I work at a company with commission salesmen. Due to some market changes, commissions got slashed by a bunch of companies we represent. One of them, a major company for us, decided to announce this via email on a Friday evening. After business hours, a 30-year veteran salesman was out at the bar, saw it, and drowned his sorrows for a few hours. Then, he decided to let the sender know how he really feels about the decision. As you might expect, he replied all, and sent his profanity-filled, drunkenly composed rant to every competitor, salesman, and company official, of course, tied to our company's email. Even has our business card as his email signature. Then he sent a follow-up, letting us know just how little he cares. Monday morning, we called him in, and he just shook his head and let us know he's well aware of why we're here, what he did, and help pack his stuff. Story 24, I saw two stone masons get in a fist fight when I worked construction. I was laying electrical underground pipe, and they were laying block wall. One threw a hammer at the other one and hit in the head. Cracked his eye socket. Cops came and took our statements, and the guy got arrested for assault. Story 25, one employee decided to brave it, just to be daring, and park in the CEO's reserved parking spot. Thinking the boss was away on vacation, he knew it was strictly forbidden, but did it anyway. His timing proved wrong. The CEO hadn't started vacation yet. It was fireworks when he got there and found the employee's car parked in his reserved spot. Those fireworks resulted in his being fired and held up as an example of what it means to be employed on an annual basis. Story 26, I worked in a factory on third shift. There was a very douchey guy working one of the industrial ovens. He wore a bandana, had a soul patch, tribal tattoos, shirts with the sleeves ripped off, and owned nothing in the world except a very expensive motorcycle. So we hired this new girl, and apparently there was a love potion to her. She was in love with this guy and ignored her work to get near him. She always wore crop tops with showing and short shorts. This is a factory, so that is a safety hazard, and she was reprimanded for it, but kept doing it for him. She would leave her job to talk to him and purposefully pick up scrap near him, so she could bend over near his workstation all the time. Of course, after a while, she was asked not to come back. She starts crying and screams about how everyone there was mean and unfair to her, because we were all jealous of how hot she was. She starts hurling scrap metal at the bosses and gets escorted out. She waits in the parking lot for the rest of the shift 5 hours to try to talk Tothro herself at douchey guy. He is scared off by the crazy and doesn't want anything to do with it. She starts stalking him at work and at his favorite bar. So he ends up with a restraining order on her. Fun note, we were all making about $8 an hour. That's not enough money to put up with that kind of insane.